welcome to today's masterclass, how to get your managers to actually manage without you looking over their shoulder. And in this workshop or this masterclass today, I'm going to show you how to get your managers to the position where they're dealing with all the day-to-day issues in your business, where they're taking the initiative, where they're thinking about the future, where they're planning ahead, considering the commercial impact of their decisions and their actions, and delivering the results that really will help you to grow your business. So I'm going to be sharing how to get your managers to actually manage, because from what I've seen and experienced right now, there are loads of CEOs and MDs who feel like the team at times can be a bit of a burden to them because they're always needing them and they're not really getting everything that they want from their team. What they really want and actually deserve, because like the people that I speak to are really hardworking, is to have a team who are actually supporting them, who are on the journey with them, and who are helping them really grow their business. But unfortunately, if you're here today, I'm going to assume that a lot of the time you might be feeling like your staff are taking too much of your time, that they're just needing too much from you and needing too much input, and probably all needing different things in different ways from you. So what I'm going to share with you today will be, first of all, some of the reasons for that, to get you thinking about what applies for you and where you are with it right now. And then I'm going to go through with you what you can do about it to start getting the results that you want from your team, so you start to see your team progressing in the way that you want them to, so they're doing the right things, focusing on the right work, and ultimately making the right decisions, being commercial, being proactive, and focusing on things that make money or important to do or have in place to help you grow the business. Now, to do that, I'm going to walk you through this transformative model. And I use this with my clients, and it focuses on three essential areas: their leadership capability, leadership enablement, and leadership infrastructure. And when you master these three areas, you will create a management team that really delivers results. So that's what we're going to get into. But before I do that, I really would like to quickly introduce myself. If you've been on one of my masterclasses before, you know I hate a long intro. So I'm just going to take a minute to talk to you a little bit about me and who I am, so that you know that what I'm going to share is worth your time today. So I'm Leanne Bridges. I've spent 30 years leading teams in both corporates and growing SMEs. And in the last 12 years specifically, I've been advising growing businesses on how to get the best results from their teams and from their people. And I did this myself as a director, as you'll see here, in a niche gas business that was predominantly a chemical engineering and manufacturing focused business. And we grew that business and that team across Europe. And in the last 5 years, I've been operating my own business, doing the same, advising CEOs and MDs and senior stakeholders how to do this. And you'll find across all the different platforms, there are over 50 recommendations for my work. If you'd like to know any more than that, then the best place to go and have a look and to connect with me is on LinkedIn. If we're not already connected there, then please do connect. I do share daily insights on that platform. All you need to do is just scan the QR code or type my name in and find me. And when you do that, just make sure that you click the more button and then to connect, so that we're connected and we can have a conversation. And that way then, if you've got any questions about today, you can just drop me a DM and ask them, and I'd be really happy to answer for you. So let's get into the good stuff and why you're here. So first of all then, from doing the work that I've done over all of these years, I speak to so many people, and I've noticed that there are 5 common obstacles that prevent managers from actually managing. So before we get into how to deal with it, I just want to go through what those are, because I think those really get you thinking about what's needed and what might be going on for you. Now, as I go through these, what I'd like you to do is just type into the comments or the chat function those that are resonating with you. And if you, as I say, if you don't want to share that publicly with everyone, you can just share that with me. But that really helps me understand like where your focus is today, and it helps me in future masterclasses too. So number 1 is the reason why, or the common obstacles that stop managers from actually managing without the CEO or MD getting involved, first of all, is that some of the team just don't take the initiative. They just don't spot what needs to be done, what issues need sorting out, or they don't think ahead to prevent problems about what's coming down the line without you stepping in and sort of reminding them or prompting them. And that might be something operational, it might be a customer issue, it might be a team problem that they're just letting drag on. And so what that does is it leaves you firefighting daily instead of actually spending time moving the business forward. And then because the managers aren't being proactive enough, then they're not asking other people or other teams to do what they need to do early enough. And so then other people get inconvenienced, and then that frustrates them. And so not only is it you that spends your time then dealing with this stuff, but then it wastes other people's time, puts them out, and then you're fielding all these complaints because other managers or team members just aren't being given the notice they need to get things done. And it's like this lack of initiatives that can really keep companies stagnant and stop them from growing, or even struggling to keep up with like current demand, I find, because the business just is relying too heavily on too few people. And the clients I work with and the businesses I work with, and actually the people I speak to, are actually really smart, intelligent people. Often got technical businesses that are quite complex, and they know that there's a huge demand for their work, their products, their services, but they quite often can't go after too much of it because they feel a bit held back because the team are struggling to grow with the business. So look, that's the first point. Let me know into the chat. Do you find that your team lack taking the initiative or being proactive enough? Let me know if that resonates for you, and then we'll have a look and see what's going on as we go through. I'm going to come back to that shortly. So number 2 is, even though you're holding, or they're holding, management team meetings, or one-to-one meetings, or maybe both, or maybe more, the team still aren't following through with all the actions that they're actually committed to. And so these meetings that you're having can feel a bit like talking shops, where you're like going around the houses a little bit. You might get to some actions, but then people don't follow up and do the things they actually commit to. And you might be certain that you had an agreement that they would do it, but then you get to the next meeting and the progress hasn't been made that you thought would be, and people are like going off at tangents sometimes too. And again, these people in your team, in the teams, they'll be smart, they'll be experienced, and they seem like the right people. And some of them have done the job before in other companies at the right level, so they should know how to do this stuff. And some of the others might have been with like the company or the specific CEO for a long time and grown with the business, been promoted internally. They're all being paid high salaries, but they're not going off and finding out what they need to do to actually get things done. And my clients will quite often say to me, like, nobody showed me how to do all of this, but it seems like I'm having to do like a disproportionate amount of time, or a lot of time is being spent on chasing people up and guiding them and sort of cajoling people through. So let me know into the chat if that is resonating for you. Number 3. So this is about the fact that some team members just fall short. And even though you've, like, the MD or the CEO have had conversations about what needs to be happening and the results they want, the team members do still continue to fall short on some of the things. Or if they do make the changes, they're a bit short-lived. And the problem can be that some of these people are actually key people in their business. They might be highly skilled and people they really want to hang on to, and they might have known them a long time and they respect them, and they're certain that they should be able to do the things the way that they need to be done, and they keep sounding like they know what they're doing too. But unfortunately, things don't seem to change. And so they leave these meetings where they've discussed some of these things, and then they just go back to doing the same old thing. And so the MD finds himself having the same meeting again, like a month later. So let me know whether that resonates for you. Do you find that you've got certain people in your team where there's just these small shortfalls in performance, and despite guiding them, they're just not like getting over the hump and actually making the change that you want to see? So number 4 then is, and this kind of sums lots of this up and brings it all together. And I find that this is probably the most common and actually the most important point, is that both the team and the business lack a well-defined process and an approach to leading the team that allows the team to perform at its best without this constant oversight. And so it's the absence of this structure and this like clear approach to leadership is what's forcing the MD back into all the detail. And they definitely don't want to be like micromanaging this stuff, just want it done. And they know that micromanaging is not going to move things forward. And so what I'm going to share with you today across those 3 pillars is actually the process and the leadership approach, like using that model, that I've just shared, so that you can get your managers to actually manage, because it actually is a process. There are a series of things that you can do and things that you can follow so that the team become easy to manage and you get the support that you actually need to grow your business. So that's number 4. And then the final thing I actually see time and again, so do let me know if that's a thing for you, whether the business really lacks a consistent leadership approach and way of leading people and the infrastructure and process to support it. Let me know whether that's something in your business that you feel like could actually be improved upon. There might be parts that you think are missing. And then number 5 is that quite often I find, and I see this time and again, is that people kind of just hope that this stuff gets better because they're so busy operationally, haven't got the time for this. They haven't got the time to give it the attention it needs. And so therefore they'll never really get the team performing at the levels that they could get and growing at the rate that could happen. They're just kind of really hoping that over time it improves, thinking like when people have been there another 6 months, it might get better, or it just might work itself out a bit better when they hire the next person. Or maybe if they just put in a few more hours now, then they'll get over this hump. But unfortunately, it just doesn't get any better. It just doesn't. It just gets more complicated the longer you leave it and the more the business is growing. So let me know into the chat, like, which of those 5 things, and for some people it can be all of them, or it might be just a few of them. Let me know what come up for you of these 5 sort of obstacles and common problems that stop people from managing. Whichever one resonates the most from these, then I will be dealing with that today. But maybe there are other things that are coming up for you. So let me know those into the chat and then we'll make sure we deal with these. So let's have a look. So Claudette, you said, you definitely need help with number 5, so hoping things will get better with time. I think that's so common because we're just busy, aren't we? And so naturally you just think it will get easier. Lisa, you always say hope, so similar to Claudette. Aman saying taking ownership and making decisions is a thing in his business. And then I've got another one here, privately, or is that in the Q&A? Feed them with challenging projects. Okay, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, Francois. Maybe just give me a bit more info on that one. Probably need to read it a bit more carefully. Feed them with challenging projects. Okay, yeah, let me know a bit more about what you mean with that one, and then I'll continue on. So there are 3 parts to this today then. There are these 3 parts. So we have got leadership capability, leadership enablement, and leadership infrastructure. And this is really the key to getting this working. So let's get into it. Part 1 then. So part 1 is about developing your leaders' capabilities. So the focus here is on building a management team that can truly lead, that take ownership, that step up, and that guide their teams without you getting involved. And if you're like the CEOs and MDs I work with, you will have a talented management team. You'll have people that know the business inside and out, but somehow you're finding yourself back in the thick of it, managing issues that really just shouldn't be back on your plate. And so you can be left wondering, like this chap here, like, why is it still happening? They've got experience, they know their areas, they know their functions, they know their stuff, yet whenever it gets challenging, they're back at your door again and not stepping up in the way that you need them to. Now, the reality here is this, that there is a gap in leadership capability. We all know this, really. Being good at the job doesn't automatically make somebody a good leader of people. It's not just about knowing their area. They need to know how to lead other people effectively. And this is where they struggle, because leading people is very different from a technical job. They need something more than advice on how to do it or tasks handed to them. What they actually need is the skills to lead. Now, when I work with people in my program, I go through 16 essential leadership skills that I know from years of doing this and from the research I've done, that they're just key to creating high performing teams and driving consistent business results and growth. And here's the thing, here's the good news. So it's been a bit doom and gloom so far. The good news is But most managers don't actually need an absolute overhaul. It's actually about making small but meaningful shifts across 2 or 3 areas. And that, I find, is what ends up making a massive difference. It's subtle shifts that really allow them to step into their leadership roles. Now, I obviously couldn't go through 16 skills now, but I am going to share with you 3 of the most common skills that I find tend to be missing. And if you notice any of these skills are missing in your team, then addressing these will be game changing for you. They're definitely areas that we need to focus on helping your managers step up with. So the first is this. It is delegating clearly and effectively. So I've noticed that if you've noticed, that tasks aren't getting completed on time or that results are falling short, like one common reason is the way that delegation is happening. So your managers might be asking for work to be done, but maybe it's not being delivered to the standard or deadline that's needed. And that is very rarely that the manager isn't capable, you'd be pleased to hear. It's actually that they haven't learned how to delegate effectively themselves. So they're struggling to set clear expectations, to set out exactly what's needed, or to set deadlines in the right way. Now, I share an example of this with you, and you might find this quite staggering, but I find it a lot, so it's a really common occurrence for me. But I had this manager who worked for a client of mine, and his team weren't processing orders in the right time frame. Straightforward problem, isn't it? And after we dug into it, what the actual problem was, it all boiled down to him not delegating work properly and then monitoring what was happening effectively, because the deadlines weren't clear enough, the process wasn't clear enough. And the process between the team members wasn't clear enough. And the manager basically just wasn't putting enough focus into what his teams were actually doing. But the MD assumed the manager would naturally have done this. But when we dug into what was going on, he just hadn't set it up properly. And so once we worked on how to delegate properly and giving him the skills that he needed to do that, the change was immediate there. And it's so common, isn't it, to assume your managers are doing something that seems like really, really obvious to you. And what's more with this situation, and again, I see this a lot, is that it actually saved him hiring another person into that business because they had thought that they were under-resourced in that business. And I have to tell you, that happens so often. Teams thinking they haven't got enough people, but so often it's not the real issue. It's a leadership skills gap. So let me know whether that's something you think you might be suffering from in your business, or whether you're thinking about hiring at the moment and maybe they're wondering whether actually is the work being organised as well as it needs to be? Are they delegating this properly? I'd be interested to hear whether that's something you think is going on in your business. So try not to look at that for a moment. The chat is over here. Otherwise I get completely distracted. So the second area is, the second most common leadership skill that's missing is addressing performance issues. Though I think we probably know this, very often managers avoid addressing issues, whether that's underperformance, missed deadlines, behaviour that's dragging like the team down. Managers feel uncomfortable dealing with it, or how to approach it in a constructive way. But when performance issues are ignored, they fester, they grow, it leads to more underperformance, then they'll get the team discontented. And then the better performers, they start to take this view about like, well, why am I bothering then if so-and-so hasn't got to do it? And then you get to this position where some of them might start to think about leaving. And so you get into this spiral of negativity that can grow if you're not careful. And so to lead effectively, managers just have to be able to address these challenges head on. They need the skills to be able to do it in a way that actually keeps people on track, and in a way that they handle the conversations well. And so that, that they're solving the problem in a way that keeps the team motivated and accountable, and, and actually makes them want to contribute rather than actually just destroying morale. So they need the skills to be able to have those conversations in a way that really works. So let me know for you, do you think that that's an issue in your business? Do you think that your managers are addressing performance issues, or do you think there are actually some that are being a bit brushed under the carpet for now? Because perhaps they just don't know how to deal with them in a way that's going to work and keep motivation high, as well as holding people accountable. So While you do that, I'm going to move on. The third area then, the third most common leadership skill that's missing in these management teams are motivating the team to get the best out of them. Like, you know that leadership isn't just about getting tasks ticked off, if only It's about creating an environment where people are motivated, where they're energized, where they're willing to go the extra mile. And, you know, if you've noticed some of your teams going through the motions or whispers of discontentment coming out of certain departments or functions, it's often a reflection of the leadership that they're receiving. You know, maybe the manager's been overly critical or coming across as a bit aggressive or abrupt, or maybe they're just not very inspirational to work for. You know, people do need to feel valued. They need to feel like an important cog in this wheel, not just a number. And people need to feel that their work actually matters. And what I find is that many technically strong managers lack this skill naturally. And they just don't have this natural ability to inspire and engage their teams. And so when that's the case, even the most capable people will only really reach a fraction of their potential as a leader, and their team won't ever get the results that they could if only they were more motivated. So it's absolutely essential that we help them to understand how to motivate their team, because they just, you know, it's a case of learning, they just don't know how to do it. So let me know whether you think you've got some technical people in your business where, you know, perhaps they just don't actually know how to motivate people in a way that's going to work. In terms of looking at that, how do you, as the CEO or the MD, develop that leadership capability? Because that's the next question. It's all very well knowing this, and you may know this already. So let me walk you through an example of how one of my clients made this shift in their business, and they actually built the capability of the finance director so that he actually managed and led his team. He's obviously technically strong. So this FD, my client, he had an FD, and technically very capable, but struggling with the people side. And so the MD was constantly pulled back in to sort out problems, issues that really he just shouldn't have been getting involved in. Things like complaints that invoices hadn't been paid, you know, reports that other teams had been requesting were just taking too long, and so people were moaning about it. And those sorts of problems that just seem to hit everywhere across the business. And it wasn't actually that the FD was incapable, it was just that he lacked the skills to lead his team and to get it done. And, you know, he'd done courses on time management and management, but these generic courses that people just hear the theories really in them, when in fact what they actually need to be able to do is to be able to do this stuff. You know, knowing how to do it and doing it are two completely different things. So, you know, an analogy would be like if you read a book on swimming, my guess is you wouldn't be able to swim when you got yourself in the pool. I certainly wouldn't chance jumping in the deep end. But that's what's happening here, isn't it? Is that, you know, people are hearing the theory, jumping in the deep end, and then not swimming. And that's because they don't have the actual skill to do it. So look, we focused with this particular person on understanding what the gaps were in his leadership capability that were actually holding it back. And we got into it. He struggled to delegate properly. He avoided addressing underperformance, and he wasn't motivating the team to do their best. And so we worked through with him how to actually delegate in a way that just didn't leave ambiguity. We made sure that his team knew exactly what was required, and we helped him to do that. So they understood actually how to do it. We practiced having tough conversations so that he felt confident tackling underperformance directly. And we helped him find ways to inspire his team that felt good to him and natural to him, because we don't want him, you know, trying to be somebody else, but how to bring them together so they all felt like they were important to the success of that function. And over the course of a few weeks, things started to really shift. He started taking ownership. He started setting clear expectations. He was leading his team confidently. The MD, who had been actually on the verge of replacing this chap, found that with this right type of support now, that he turned into a strong leader, or a stronger leader. And so instead of constantly chasing him up to get these things done and hearing all of these murmurings about stuff that wasn't happening in the team, etc., the MD actually could start taking a step back and actually leaving into it, because actually the finance team then was in good hands. So look, to pull this together, to rectify these gaps in leadership capability, it's about really getting under skin of the real problem problem and solving that. And when that happens, you don't just get like a technically competent individual, you're then getting someone who can truly lead and like get the most out of their team. And investing just a little bit of time in that will make like the biggest difference. Okay, I was about to go off on a tangent, I'm not going to do that. But look, if you are starting to recognise these challenges and starting to think, well, I wonder actually which of those leadership skills might be causing the issues in my team, because like I say, there are 16 of them. I'm going to be offering some free team audit calls today at the end of the session. And on the call, what I'm going to be offering you is to explore the areas that are holding your managers back and affecting their ability to step up, so that you can actually address those gaps in a targeted way and stop them relying on you so much. Now, there's a QR code here if you know that you want one of those that you can scan, or there's a link there that you can type in and grab one. You know, for me, I've helped so many clients and their teams evolve as leaders and get better results from their team. You'll see here, there are loads of examples of this, and you'll find more across all the platforms. But I've done this with other businesses, and this can really work for you too. So there's a QR code there, there's a link, and as the slides go on, I'll leave it on some of them, so that if we go forward, you know, and you want one of those and you can grab one. There's a limited number today. I think there are 7 of them available. So go ahead and grab yourself one if you want one. But I want us to move on now. So let me just check the questions in the chat, and then we will move on. Okay. Oh, Stuart, no problem. Hopefully you can catch up. But if not, then I'm going to send a replay later so you can join the beginning bit again. Yeah, Claudette. Constantly trying to motivate my team. It's quite challenging. Well, that'd be really interesting to get into understanding what's going on there. I think that's probably, well, that is definitely worth a conversation. There'll be something going on there if that's a constant challenge. So the second pillar then, let's get on. So the second pillar is leadership enablement. So, right, let's start here. So you've built your company this far, or the company, if you're the CEO of somebody else's company, then you know you've taken the company to this point. You've led the team through loads of challenges, I'm sure, too many to mention, countless problems, and you've kept it all moving forward. And that is exactly what has got you the success to this point. But as a business grows, what's required from leadership, you'll know this, it changes. It's not about like getting involved in all the issues now. Instead, it's actually about steering the ship, setting the direction, and making sure that everyone else is dealing with the issues that's coming up, that are coming up. And it's about shifting your focus to where you can really have the most impact. You know, it's about create an environment where other people are solving these problems independent of you, and letting some of the operational tasks that come your way go, so that you can actually concentrate on growing your business and moving it forward and setting the strategy, and actually have some time to mentor new team members or new leadership team members. And the thing is, again, you'll know this, your time is the most valuable resource in the business, but we all know how quickly it can get filled up with day-to-day things. You know, it's natural, isn't it? Urgent problems come in and suddenly your day has disappeared and is packed with tasks really that somebody else should have handled. Let me know into the chat, does that happen for you? Do you find yourself all of a sudden filling your day with just issue after issue that keep coming up? Because the key to leading through really this phase is about deliberately and intentionally getting your managers to manage, which is what you're here for, so that you can do the strategic work that you need to do. And in my experience, and for all the work that I do with CEOs and MDs, look, from my point of view, one of the hardest shifts to make is getting your managers to manage, and making that move from you being in control of so much of it to managing through managers. And the reason for that is because some of the foundational pieces just aren't there. And it's when you combine all of these 3 actions I'm sharing with you today, so leadership capability, enablement, and infrastructure, that it's possible to let go, to get your managers managing and feel comfortable taking a step back operationally. It's about really here stepping into a new kind of leadership where you move from control to enablement. from firefighting to future building, and you become the leader that your business needs now, and your team, your team becomes like the kind of effective, cohesive group that actually helps you drive the company forward, that are independent and confident. So let me share with you now how to do this, and I'll walk you through how I've done this with a client, because it's just easier and brings it to life for you, I think. So the client I'm actually talking about is an MD of a manufacturing business, and he got some really fantastic results by making shifts, not fundamental changes, shifts in how he led. Now, he was actually already a really great leader in many ways. His team loved working for him. He'd created this lovely, supportive, positive environment. But despite all that, he still found himself, and by the way, he also has some really great managers too. But despite all that, he still found himself dealing with operational issues for his managers that they just should have been handling. And, some of his managers weren't following through on tasks that he needed them to, and they weren't holding their teams accountable enough either. And it just was slowing the business progress down. And he had been avoiding some tough conversations himself that he knew he probably should be having. And so despite this brilliant culture and the team really liking working for him, he then often would hear people moaning about other people or problems. And so after getting into this with me and understanding that he needed to shift his approach to leadership enablement, we took a closer look at the way that he was leading the team. We looked at what was working well, because there's some brilliant stuff that he was doing, and what was holding the team back. And so we focused on identifying what was it that he was doing that was a multiplier. So those ways of behaving that actually helps the team get results. And what was he doing that was a diminisher? So those things that unintentionally limit his team's performance. So it won't surprise you to hear that one of the biggest multipliers was, of course, his supportive nature. He'd created this environment where people felt comfortable and valued, and it is a brilliant foundation. But there were also diminishing habits, like tough conversations, not always setting clear enough expectations. And these behaviours, although they were unintended, they were preventing the team from stepping up and getting the results that he really needed from them. So we worked on practical ways to modify his leadership approach to make sure that he was supportive, but the way that he did it also drove accountability. And so one of the key changes was learning how to set expectations in a way that made the team accountable and got them delivering the right results in the right time frame. And another critical area we worked on was tackling tough conversations that he'd been avoided. And we approached that in a way that allowed him to go into those conversations feeling confident and prepared. And we broke down each conversation into what needed to be said, and we practiced framing it so that it felt constructive rather than confrontational. And, this was about making sure that the feedback landed well and making it clear that the work had to be delivered without undermining the positive environment that he'd actually built in his company. And so, after doing this work and working through these things and a few others too, the team started delivering more consistently. They started thinking about what was coming down the line without needing prompting, and they knew what was expected, and they felt empowered to meet those expectations, because the reality is when people aren't certain, then they're not sure what to do, and so therefore they don't act. And some of these things really get in the way. We just don't really realize the significance of them. But with this, his team got back on track, and he's maintained a culture where the team still feel really valued. And again, it wasn't about a massive overhaul. It was about making small but powerful shifts that transformed the way his managers performed. So he just modified his approach, and he drove accountability and ownership in the teams. But what happened then is, of course, that he was role modelling really effective leadership. And of course, then that creates a ripple effect, because the team starts seeing how to do it. And so then they start to step up themselves. And then they start leading with more clarity and more conviction, and they start to tackle challenges head on too. And so By doing this and making this shift, he's got better performance across the business, and it's given him the time that he wanted to focus on growing his business, leaving some of that operational headache behind. And it's these kinds of deliberate changes to your leadership approach that move you from like being in the day-to-day operational issues to actually having time to drive your business forward. Because you're creating a team that just doesn't depend on you all the time, but it operates independently and confidently, and they're helping you grow the business. So that's leadership enablement. Let me know like what your thoughts are around this. Do you feel like there are areas where you maybe could enable the team more by slightly tweaking your approach to get better results from them? Lisa's saying, turn he into she and this is me. Yeah, I don't think I can do that, Lisa. But yeah, I take your point. Okay, yeah. This is a thing this just happens like across so many businesses, and you just see repeat of the same issues, slightly different versions of them, sort of over and over again. People typically are struggling with very similar things, and that's why like these frameworks work, because they're tried and tested across all like these problems that are just repeated everywhere. So okay, let's crack on through. Where are we for time? We're doing good for time, so we're going to have a good amount of time, I think, at the end for Q&A, so that's great. So part 3, where are we? Part 3, we are on this leadership infrastructure. So then, having walked through like the fact that we need to make our leadership, we need to get our leaders to be capable, we need to then create the environment and have the skills ourselves to really truly enable them. And the next piece is about leadership infrastructure. So this is about having systems, structures and processes in place that create the foundations for your team to perform at their best. If I'm honest with you, most CEOs and MDs believe, and they tell me all the time, that they have got these processes in place. But the reality I find is this, that more often than not, they have only partially built these systems out. And without the full infrastructure, the business will struggle to grow smoothly, because there just isn't this solid framework and mechanic that everyone needs to operate from. And, this leadership infrastructure isn't about like having a business plan or holding a team meeting. Those are starting points of this. It's about building the underlying systems that allow every part of your organization to work in sync. It's the strategic alignment, the communication rhythms, the clear accountability structures that make everyone pull in the same direction without needing constant oversight from you. And that's why, like, even though many CEOs or MDs think that they have set this infrastructure up, they're still finding their managers working at cross purposes, that projects are getting stuck somewhere. Some of the teams are duplicating efforts because these priorities just aren't fully aligned. And it's really easy to assume that people know what's expected because we've discussed it with them. But without the concrete infrastructure to do that and a way to consistently align it and to communicate and hold other people accountable, things invariably get lost. They drop through the cracks and you end up in the weeds of it all, sorting it out. And so again, I'll share how it works in practice when you do this. So there's a client of mine who runs an MD, he's an MD of an engineering company, and he had this specifically as one of his problems, and he was convinced that his management team was aligned with the business strategy, but the reality, it was different. And when we dug deeper, we found that each manager had a bit of a different interpretation of what was wanted. They were all working really hard, there was no doubt about that, but their efforts were too scattered because they just didn't have this unified clarity about where the business was headed and what the top priorities were. And so there was an amount of confusion. And the result of that was that there was frustrations across the team, there was some misunderstandings, there was quite a lot of wasted time because of that, while people were like toing and froing on things. And being a bit annoyed with each other at times. And if I just give you a small example of the sorts of things, this is one of the things from there, but they've got loads of pressing staff problems and operational problems to resolve. But one of the directors was working on an engagement app, a staff engagement app. Now, I love a staff engagement app. I love creating great cultures and staff engagement. And so I would normally be like, yes, that's a brilliant thing to do. But the business wasn't ready to measure staff engagement. I think we all knew what the problems were. They didn't have the infrastructure or even the right foundations in place to be doing that. So it just wasn't today's priority. It was about like walking before they could actually run. And like people were missing things because they didn't know what other people were doing. And then people would tread on each other's toes. And so it was a bit like they were all in sort of their own boat, like paddling in slightly different directions. And so we used a strategic alignment process that I've got to bring everyone together. We got the strategy to a point where like people understood it and they could see clearly what they needed to do and achieve, and they really prioritized it to get their functions to a point where they were driving that direction together. And then once we got everyone lined up, we worked on things like communication flows to make sure that this alignment wasn't a one-off process, because that so often happens. Good intentions, we do it once. We got the communication in flows to make sure it wasn't a one-off process that got forgotten. And that's just simple processes. I like simple things, to keep like the priorities clear and relevant. And then like even as things changed, everyone knew how to handle a setback or a change or an adjustment without needing to keep going back to the MD all the time. And then finally, we built in some accountability mechanisms. And so instead of having the MD like checking in constantly, he knew at a glance where his teams were, and it just gave him the confidence to step back and trust the team more to deliver and give them the space to do that then. Because, we can't just walk away from this stuff, can we, and hope. And that's what it really takes, is like when I say about you need all these three things, that's why, because you couldn't just, people say, oh, give your managers space. And I know I get quite a bit of comment on that sometimes online when I talk about it, but how can you when you actually know it's going to fall apart? And that's because it doesn't have all of these three things in place. So what happened, I'll get back to it, I've gone off a tangent again. So what happened is, instead of the MD running around trying to fix things, they could, like, the team were working more closely together. There was actual more cohesion in the team. And managers were clearer on their roles, what was expected and how their work really contributed. And tasks weren't getting missed or duplicated. And everyone just had a stronger sense of ownership as a result of all of this. And so the MD, is spending less time on operational issues, and he has got more than a day back a week already because of this, that he can now actually use to grow his business instead of running around doing all this stuff. And again, it wasn't about making massive change. We just infilled existing practices in this infrastructure piece with some simple process that fitted in, that meant everybody was aligned, communication was clear, accountability was embedded, and it's just small shifts that made all the difference. The thing is, it's really hard to see what they are when you're inside of it all, but it meant the business could grow more smoothly, the team were more energized again, and he could lead the business forward. And to take that point, I did this with a different type of business. And in that business, one of the changes that we actually made resulted in a massive staff saving in terms of hours. They saved 350 hours a month. And I think the business got like 200 people in it. So it's a good chunk, 2.5 full-timers a month back in hours. Just from looking at this framework, because we'd identified that there were too many people involved in too many things at certain points. And right now, that business is actually in the process of reinvesting those hours in growth initiatives, because they're growing, so they don't need to contract and lose their staff. They actually want to use that now to push forward rather than wasting it, which is what was happening. And, I see wasted hours like all over the place. If I go back to that other example earlier, where the delegation was an issue there was like wasted hours. So anyway, I'm going off a tangent. So leadership infrastructure, that's that. As we're starting to draw towards the end now, here we are getting near the hour. Look, if there's one thing that I think would be really helpful to take away from you today, for you to take away today from the work that I do, it's that getting your managers to actually manage is about having the right skills, the right environment, and the right infrastructure in place. Because it's easy to assume that some of the gaps will close themselves with time, or that the team will naturally figure it out. But from what I have seen time and time again, is that real lasting change requires deliberate focus and the right kind of support. Because the truth is, like most of the CEOs that I work with, or MDs, they've done the hard part. They've built a successful business. They've hired a capable team. They've like gone through all these challenges. But getting your team to step up and to truly lead and to free you from this daily firefighting isn't something that will ever happen without intention and deliberate action. And it's just about understanding the subtle shifts that you need to make in all of these areas and how to put them into action in a way that actually works in business. So I hope that's been helpful. We're going to do some Q&A in a minute, but there'll be some of you now who are keen to get this done. For those of you, so for those people, I'd like to introduce an opportunity that will help you implement the changes quickly and effectively. It of course won't be for everybody. It will be for those people who are sat here thinking, yeah, I actually want to fix these things now. I'm ready to do it. I want to grow my business and I'm fed up with feeling hamstringed by these issues. So it's for people wanting to take action. If you don't want to take action, then it definitely isn't for you. But if you're wondering how you can get all this working for you and build your managers to your team of managers to a point where they're actually managing and helping you grow the business, then I've got an opportunity for you. For anybody that doesn't want to hear this, it's just take me a couple of minutes to run through and then we'll do the Q&A piece. But this is my Business Accelerator program. It's a program that helps you develop a high-performing team for yourself so that you've got the platform and the capability that you need so that you can grow your business in an easier way, in a scalable, in a sustainable way. And so we work together across 3 areas, like I've just mentioned. So we would work on leadership capability in the program. So in that part, we would be identifying the critical leadership skills in your management team that they don't have, that they actually need to get results. So we pinpoint what those issues were with each person, and then we would work on how you were going to develop those skills within the team. So whether that's delegation, whether that's addressing performance issues, whether that's inspiring people, or one of the other skills, we would identify that and work on it. Because the thing is, I think sometimes when we have these issues, what I've seen happen is people think, oh, I'll just pop them on a management course. And that's all very well, but actually people need to know how to do this stuff. And while we rely on dropping them on a management course to do that, A, they come back quite often and haven't learned the skill anyway. But B, we never get ourselves to a place where we can actually develop that capability with them. And really then, as you're onboarding new leaders into your business, you'll need to know how to identify those gaps and actually be able to infill those that they don't have. Because, you know, from all my experience of hiring, you rarely get a leader come in that's like the full ticket. There will always be something. So I think it's really important to be able to do that for yourself. Although if you want to buy a leadership training course, feel free to buy one, fine. But I just see that so often, and it just isn't creating a sustainable way of you actually plugging those gaps in your business. So then the second pillar is leadership enablement. So we'll work on then honing your skills to do that with them, so that you can develop your approach, so that you can then consistently lead your team and help them develop, and do that in a way that they are taking ownership without you needing to be involved anywhere near as much as you are now, so that you actually have got the time that you want to focus on growth. And then the third area is, like we've already covered, is leadership infrastructure. So in that part of the program, I would take you through the systems that you need, the structures, the way that you need to have your strategy laid out so people understand it, so that you have got the solid foundation that you need in your business, so that everybody performs at their best. They're all aligned strategically, there are clear communication flows, and that there's strong accountability across your business. So I won't spend a lot of time going into them, because I think you've probably got a flavour already. And of course, if you want to talk about them in more detail, then we can do that together offline. But in terms of my programs, they get like amazing results. Please don't just take my word for it, as I'm sure you wouldn't. But you know, there are reviews, there's some here, and you'll find them dotted around on like Google and LinkedIn and on my website. And I think that's probably it. But they're across the internet, different places, so go and dig those out. In terms of the Business Accelerator program, sometimes people think that they won't have enough time for it. You actually only need 3 hours a month for it. And when you think about the days saving per week that my clients are getting, then, you know, the payback in terms of time is huge. And the reason it only takes that is because you'll spend 3 hours doing the work with me, and then anything else you'll be doing are actually activities you would be doing in your job anyway. And so there's not like a load of studying to be doing this. It's practical, it's really well paced, it's actionable, because I know that you're busy, my clients are busy. And so I support you across those months to make the shifts you need to get your managers managing in a way that is manageable for you too. It's basically a blend of mentoring from me, guidance, and then coaching, as well as giving you the frameworks and tools that you need so that you can basically lift and drop them in your business. Like the leadership assessment, I will give you a tool and you can just literally use it. So you haven't got to figure out what these skills are for yourself and what they look like if they're doing them. And then on top of that, the WhatsApp channel. So if then in the time between when we meet, so we meet twice a month for an hour and a half, if in between that time then you've got questions, you can just WhatsApp me so that you don't get held up on things during the month and you can keep progressing. So I've got a limited number of team audit calls today. I felt my watch buzz a load of times earlier on. So I'm not sure like what are left of those now. But on that call, we can discuss the results that you want. Here we are. We can discuss the results that you want from your team. We'll talk about where you are now, where your team are now, where you want to be, and map out how to get there. You could obviously ask me any questions about the programme. So if you want one of those, then please do grab one. I've only got limited calls. I've only got limited capacity anyway to bring people into that. I'm only taking 2 people in right now to that programme. And if you can't find a time in my diary, do DM me and we'll try and make something work. So look, I hope that's all been helpful to you. Let me open up for questions now. I'm really happy to answer anything that you've got today. So let me see where we are in the chat. So, right. Anybody got any questions now? Not yet. Sometimes they take a moment to come through. So I'm going to hang on and see, because people are still here. So I'm guessing that people have got questions or they're interested to hear what other people are going to ask. Okay, Francois, you're saying I answered your question. Oh, you've got a strong team of engineers, relatively new in the organisation. We've got a roadmap by the CTO who slows down their ideas and creativity. The issue is to motivate his team with challenging technical projects. Okay, so you think I've answered that already? Okay. If I haven't, then come back to me. How do you start on the process for the infrastructure? For me, I've built that out in terms of what's needed, based on all the experience I've had of putting this into businesses. So in terms of where to start, it's about making sure that you've got strategic, like the strategy in a position where it's very clear, and it's translatable for people. And you need to make sure that you've got the communication pieces in place so that there are the mechanics then to take that strategy into action, and the team know how to communicate in terms of changes and what's going on, and you've got the accountability mechanisms in place. So there are sort of a series of things that you'll need to get in place in order to make that happen. So I think it's looking across those and thinking, where do I feel like there are some gaps, and then plugging them, because I've also got a framework that I would use in a program, but that I think, other than that, it's about looking across that and actually building out like your own way of delivering that. So I think I would be looking across those 3 areas and thinking, where is a problem and how can I plug the gap, if I was to be doing that for myself. So let me know if that's helpful for you. Obviously, I can't go through the whole of that system now with you, because that would take a bit of time. But yeah, let me know if that's sort of broadly giving you somewhere to start looking. Stuart, you're very welcome. Okay, anybody else got any questions for today? Oh, we've got something else going on here. Yes, it will be available to watch back. I'm going to download it later on, and then I'll email it out to you once the download's ready to watch. So it's quite often people find that they pick up more on the second time around. Good, okay. Anyone got any more questions I can answer for you? Okay, how many people have we still got here? We've still got everybody here. So, right. Anyone got any more questions? Really happy to answer any for you. Let me know. Okay, so I'm going to assume that we probably don't. If you do have more questions, then connect with me on LinkedIn or email me and ask me. I'd be really happy to answer them for you. Otherwise, I think what I'm going to do now then is close down the call. Like I say, you can contact me, LinkedIn or through email are always the best two ways to get in touch with me. I'd be really happy to answer any questions. I think I'll see more calls coming in terms of bookings. So it'd be great to see some of you on calls, and I look forward to going through a team audit with you. Other than that, thank you so much for your participation today. It's been brilliant how much you've been involved, and I'll look forward to catching up with some of you soon. Take care for now.